on CBS on Thanksgiving Friday at noon. Penn State at Michigan Michigan State on NBC on Thanksgiving Friday in prime time. And then Ohio State at Michigan on Fox on Saturday at noon, followed by a 4 p.m. Big Ten matchup on Fox as well. Each of these games will receive significant promotion in NFL Thanksgiving games. The power of broadcast TV cannot be underestimated. Last season, 27 of the 30 most watched college football telecasts were on broadcast TV. This season, the Big Ten will have more football games on broadcast TV than any other conference, a projected 34. When the new deal is fully implemented in 2024, we are projecting 45 broadcast TV games each season. Big Ten fans will move seamlessly from Fox to CBS to NBC. As I conclude today, just 87 days in as the commissioner of the Big Ten, I'm excited about our future. With committed leadership from our COPC and ADs, an energized conference staff, the addition of USC and UCLA, new and exciting media partners and expanded platforms, support from our coaches with the goal of winning national championships in all sports, and a strong belief in the academic athletic model, I believe that we are really just getting started. Thank you for being here, and now I'll turn it over to our moderator, Jamie, for any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. If we have questions, please raise your hand and we'll get somebody with the mic over here.
Commissioner David Gold, Inside on You. With the recent allegations that have come out of Northwestern's athletic program, I'm wondering, is the conference launching an investigation, and will we expect to see further punishment for Northwestern?
Yeah. Look, the process is, right now, Northwestern's launched 2 investigations. The process in the conference on these matters is led by the institution. So there's no investigation being launched by the conference. We'll wait to see the results of those investigations, and we'll have further comments at that time. Thank you.
Other questions? Up here in front? Hold on, Bill, just 1 second. We're going to get you the mic.
Thank you. Phil Thompson, Chicago Tribune.
Morning.
Good morning to you. Along those lines, does this behoove you to take a look at hazing within the conference, not just Northwestern, to see if this is an issue in other schools?
Yeah, I think when something like this happens, and I think our member institutions are going to take upon themselves to do that, right? And the obvious result would be to look at practices to make sure that what's happening on campus meets the standards that we expect to provide safe, and healthy environment for student athletes. So I think that's where that work needs to take place, and I know that in talking to some of our directors and coaches that they understand that.
Brandon Marcello, 24/7 Sports. Commissioner, I know you're obviously new on the job, and realignment and expansion is still being talked about nationally. I was wondering, what has the feedback been from your leadership in the conference about the future of the Big Ten and whether it should be larger than 16 in the future?
Yeah, look, I think, and this came up, early. It comes up a lot over the last couple of months. What I'll say is that all the direction I'm getting from leadership, our presidents and chancellors, our athletic directors, is to focus on USC and UCLA. We have a lot of work to do there. I'm proud of the scheduling format that we created in football. I think it touches on all the right things, but we have significant work to do on scheduling our other sports, especially our Olympic sports, to come up with the best solutions. I believe that we've got a good plan in motion. I think we'll learn from it, and then, like anything, there'll be tweaks and changes. But overall, that's really where we are. I'm not getting direction to do anything else other than that in terms of just what the conference looks like right now.
Down here in front.
Hi, Tony. Dan Hope from 11 Warriors. When you talk about USC and UCLA coming into the conference, obviously, big changes coming next year for college football playoff too. How do you kind of balance staying focused on this year while also preparing for those big changes in the future?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think, look, when it comes to the schedule this year, we're ready. We have work done right in front of us. Today is the start of that. We've got, we owe that to the conference, to all of our existing members, to make sure we put everybody in the best place this season. I don't think there's any distraction. I think we're able to do, 2 things at once, look forward and at the same time do everything we need to do day in and day out for this football season, not just our football, but also the rest of, the schedule this year for Big Ten sports. So I feel like we have the staff and the depth. We've done some things internally to shore up our staff to be able to do that, to put more energy into the integration of USC and UCLA. So I feel like the staff adjustments that we've made will allow us to do that effectively.
We're going to come over here to the right.
Tony, right here.
Where are we?
Welcome to the Big Ten.
All right.
Question for you. You touched on it in your initial statement, was the transfer portal. It just seems like it's way out of control with the number of athletes that are in this now. What are some really ideas that you guys have put forward so far to maybe put the horse back in the barn?
One of the things that we're most focused on is just the incentives that are being created for students to consider leaving, right? So when you have a system that's providing, potential benefits for entering the portal, and a lot of athletes, unfortunately, aren't realizing those benefits when they enter the portal. So there's a little bit of a grass is greener on the other side. But when I spend time with our coaches, the portal is an absolute priority. I think the combination of what's happening in terms of the benefits that are being provided with the freedom to move, that combination really came together at the same time. And so you've seen the system now operate together, and it's creating all kinds of different incentives that are fueling lots more kids to get there. And I think, when I talk to our leadership, what I get is a real deep concern about what's going to happen with graduation as students move at the levels that we're seeing today. Are they going to, moving credits and major changes? All of those things are important. And I think we're going to see the results of that pretty shortly with the data that comes out from this flood. But I think the first thing, the idea is like, what can you do around the incentives? I think, we need to really spend a lot of time on that. And that's, I think, what our focus is. And that's why, I talk about the difference between true NIL and NIL that really isn't NIL. We've got to do a better job of explaining what each thing is, right? And they're two very different things.
We'll go down here in front to our left.
Yes, sir, Commissioner. Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts and 24/7 Sports, Columbus. My question, the Pete Thamel article came out a couple months ago, and it kind of illuminated there was a lack of communication from the conference office down to the universities as to what was promised to the television partners, what could be delivered. Under your watch, is it going to be your mandate that you bring everybody involved in these discussions as much as you can? Somebody's got to lead them, but at the end of the day, these are still events on college campuses being played at off times, and it ruins the fan experience in some instances for night games in November, these kind of things. Just what do you say about that whole discussion that came out that things were promised but hadn't been fully vetted through the colleges?
Yeah, I'm not going to speak to the work that was done before I got there. What I will say overall, that scheduling is the most collaborative process in the office. Like, it doesn't work unless the conference staff is working with our athletic directors and SWAs, on a daily basis to come up with the solutions. There are historic things that get carried forward in every conference: who you play, when you want to play. And those things are all there, and we respect those. So, specifically, I think the first thing is, collaboration is obviously a big part of it. The second part of your question about, gets back to that old balance between in-person and TV, right? We hear that all the time. How do you balance the need of fans when they're traveling, at the same time trying to expose our programs to the biggest audience, especially, our national power programs that carry the load of most of that. So we understand that. I think some of the historic things that have been traditional in the conference in terms of when teams will schedule and when they won't are carried forward, and that's forward, and we respect that. And our job is to work with that, to see if there can be exceptions and changes, but at the same time understanding that those institutions are advocating for their fans and their student athletes, and we're respectful of that.
This will be our final question down here.
Hey, Tony. Jimmy
Hey.
Watkins, Cleveland.com. You'd mentioned in your opening remarks that a lot of the NIL stuff that's happening, you don't think it's true NIL.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think the system is operating that way? And how can you guys, through legislation or increased scrutiny by the NCAA, track that stuff and correct it?
Yeah, look, I want to provide some clarity with what true NIL means, right? When I say true NIL, what I mean is that the ability of a student athlete to take advantage of their marketing rights from either local or national companies. And that depends on your ability, your exposure you receive, the strength of your social media, all of those factors, and all of that's great, and that should be unlimited. What we're seeing, though, is a sense of, because there's been this sort of lack of enforcement around traditional things like inducements for pay-for-play, we're seeing money move in different places, and it's away from our member institutions. So I think what we can do is, number one, we have very long-standing rules to address this, and we need to have the ability to enforce our rules. Partly, we need support from Congress to be able to be put in a position to do that without litigation or anything hanging over our heads. So that's the balance. But then I try to explain the difference between those two. And look, in addition, you're seeing states come forward and pass legislation that really is only driven for one thing, to create more competitive power in that state. And that's just not the right place for us to be.
Okay, we do have time for one more. We'll go right over here in the center.
Commissioner, good morning. Charlie DeMar with CBS Chicago. Following the hazing allegations surrounding Northwestern's football program, what conversations have you had with Northwestern's athletic director, Derek Gregg, interim head coach, David Braun, specifically about this upcoming season and the culture and safety ultimately for the players in this upcoming season?
Yeah, I've spoken with Derek a few times, and I think our focus has been on moving forward, what they're doing, keeping me informed about the investigations and what they're doing on campus. With respect to Coach Braun, we've been able to connect. My first outreach was to congratulate him on the opportunity. Obviously, it didn't happen the way I'm sure he envisioned in terms of becoming a head coach at this level, but at the same time, I wanted him to know that we're here to support him going forward. I think that's where their focus is. So the investigations will yield results about what has happened, but I think there's a commitment to understand what's expected going forward.
Why don't we go right over here on the aisle? I keep saying it's the last one, but we're stretching for television.
Yeah, Commissioner, how close do you think college football or major college sports are to actually paying the players themselves as opposed to them seeking income from NIL sources, et cetera? How close is that model?
Yeah, it's tough to predict. What I will say about that is I think there's a commitment to understand that student athletes can and be entitled to additional benefits. What that form that takes, how that's tied to academics, all of that needs a lot more discussion. I don't want to predict on when that could happen in terms of a time frame. There's a lot of discussion about what future